sure I was going to have it recorded for her. Thank you for coming and being part of this class. I'm excited about it. St. Francis has always known that love is the answer. The hard part is we all want simpler love, easier to do love, not the really revolutionary love that is often called of us. And so that's what we're going to try to say is how do we take that step towards that? And how many had your ability to love challenged a week ago Wednesday as people stormed the Capitol building? And there's people that are not easily loved right now because of that. But in a very real way, I think love is always the answer. We just don't know exactly how to play it out so that it becomes the right answer. So I was really wonderfully challenged by the first couple of pages in the book. So I want to just share those pages with you, just the introduction, and I kind of edited it a bit. And so I'd like to read this to you. We Earthlings need to build a fundamental change of consciousness in ourselves and in every part of our national and global society in order to achieve the economic and political changes necessary. And I put these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in here to prevent the destruction of the life support system of Earth, to end global and domestic poverty and health inequality, to defeat racism, sexism, homophobia, and other forms of xenophobia, to protect human rights, to achieve social, economic, and environmental justice, and to achieve lasting peace. This new consciousness is possible and can emerge through embracing revolutionary love, the struggle for the caring society, and a new bottom line in all our economic, political, legal, educational, and cultural institutions. Liberal and progressive movements need to move beyond a focus on economic entitlements and political rights and to embrace a new discourse of love, kindness, generosity, and awe. I'm calling for both our American and global society to embrace a new bottom line so that every economic, political, societal, and cultural institution is considered efficient, rational, and/or productive, not according to the old bottom line of how much these institutions maximize money, power, or ego, but rather by how much they maximize love and generosity, kindness and forgiveness, ethical and environmentally sustainable behavior, social and economic justice. This new bottom line seeks to enhance our capacity to transcend a narrow utilitarian or instrumental way of viewing human beings and nature so that we respond to other people as embodiments of the sacred instead of thinking of them primarily in terms of how much they can serve our interests. And also to respond to nature not solely as a resource for human needs, but rather through awe, wonder, and radical amazement at the beauty and grandeur of this universe. To really embrace revolutionary love requires us to develop a strategy way beyond anything currently being given serious attention in the media, the political parties, and even many of the social change movements. And it requires us to move beyond what seems realistic in terms of the contemporary frame of discourse. Now, that's a lot of words, and it's a lot of really good words. So I want you to just look at those and tell me some of the things that spoke out to you out of those few paragraphs. And it could be two different things. It could be things you like, but it also could be, where does it challenge you?
I like the liberal and progressive movements need to move beyond a focus and so forth. I would argue also that the other extreme, the opposite of that, needs likewise to move toward a more accommodating and open conversation.
Absolutely. The tough part about what this book is going to do, Art, is that the man writing it, he's from Ticket Magazine. He's one of the editors there. He is not going to speak to the conservative around us. He is speaking specifically to the liberal and progressive. And so he is hoping to challenge you, even knowing that they need to be challenged as well. You can't do this love thing quite alone, but you're exactly right that they need to hear many of the same things. And hopefully someone there is challenging them to be in that space as well. How about the rest of you?
Well, number 2, to end global and domestic poverty and wealth inequality, really jumps out as a very strong shared value of mine.
Yes. Thank you.
I like the whole last paragraph.
Tell me
Can I
why.
listen to it on here?
Yeah.
It,
Gonna.
I didn't hear, what did you say?
No, you go ahead.
Oh, well, it just kind of gives a gentle push forward.
I'm glad you
to
think
what-
it's
to really-
gentle. I'm glad you think it's gentle, but because I don't think he's going to always feel gentle to you. Because he's not trying to just be gentle. Because we all fall into patterns. One of the things that, for example, you'll find out right away, although he is very strong in saying the Democratic Party, the liberal among us, has been strong in doing things that further our ends. Just supporting a Democratic Party, just pushing and winning political battles is not what he means by love, by revolutionary love. And he's going to push us to try to figure out how not to just seek for that type of thing, if that makes sense. Not that it's wrong, it's that, but it's that it achieves a different goal than what he's looking for. And I think he would say a smaller goal. He wants us to think larger than just that. What else stands out to you in all this?
Well, the bolded words, new bottom line, also speaks out to me. It's like we have to create something new that will serve
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, and too often, even in good progressive circles, this old bottom line of how much these institutions maximize money, power, or ego is something we still fall prey to. As much as we try not to, we can't do what we do if we don't have, we can't as easily do what we do if we don't have the money to be able to do it, if we don't have the power to be able to do it. And so we fall into those kinds of patterns, and he's trying to move us into something else. Now, the good news is how many agree that maximizing love and generosity, kindness and forgiveness, ethical and environmentally sustainable behavior, social and economic justice, how many agree that that's really some great things to be able to do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course,
So-
yeah.
So it's not like it's outside of what we want to see or what we have in our head that is the right thing to do. But how hard is it right now to to maximize your forgiveness with those people who were in the Capitol building last Wednesday?
Yeah.
Well, that's for me. That's the love means really understanding and hearing the concerns of those people, not their strategies, not their priorities, but underneath those, the basic fears that they have, the basic problems they have, because this adversarial position in our society is going to continue to be destructive unless we find a way to start some kind of communication, and some way to shared goals.
That's right.
We really begin to see ourselves as a common people with common needs instead of radically different vision, which is apparent on the surface. That we seem to be very different goals.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that somewhere we can find a way of identifying, even if we have different strategies for achieving them that we can't agree on,
Yeah.
that we will find that we really do care about the same things.
Right. And that's one of the reasons that
Nicely said, Ed. Nicely said.
that's one of the reasons why he is moving us beyond just the political solutions, because the political solutions are almost bound up in, I have to beat the other side. Now, they don't have to be, but it's hard for us to escape from that, aren't they? I have to get my candidate elected instead of yours. And somehow we have to move beyond just that type of model to do this. I want you to look at one of the paragraphs that definitely will, I think he means to challenge us mightily here. Down at the bottom of the first page where it says liberal and progressive movements need a move beyond a focus on economic entitlements and political rights to embrace a new discourse of love, kindness, generosity, and awe. Now, let me tell you what he means by that, and we'll get more into it as we go further along in the story. But it is basically, you can't just go and feed the hungry. You can't just go and care about a particular strand of humanity. You can't have just a small vision of what can happen. You have to see, at least on some level, a larger vision than just that. So, for example, how many want LGBT rights to become more and more a norm in our society?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We should want that, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
What he's asking for is, don't have that as the goal over taking it away from someone else. Does that make sense? Don't lose rights in one direction because you get rights in another direction. Don't win your cause at the expense of losing somebody else's cause. Now, that's hard to figure out, but how many know that at least part of what's going on on the conservative side, part of why those people were in the Capitol building last Wednesday is because they felt some sense of, you don't listen to me, you don't understand me, you don't care about what I care about. Right? Now, all of that may not be true, but unless I hear it and try to hear why it is that they are unheard, it's going to be hard for me to enter into a new discourse of love, kindness, generosity, and awe. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
And so we have to figure out in every moment if what we're championing sounds to the other person as if my idea, not yours. And it may not be what we mean, but we have to make sure that we're aware of that type of thing. So if you look at these 6 things up here, here's my take on that. I have very few people that I know, and I know some pretty conservative people. You might know that. Some of them are my family members.
Yeah.
I don't have very many that would disagree about these 6 items. These are progressive talking points, and my conservative friends might say, I don't quite see these the same as you, but if I get into a good conversation, they would not be against most of those items. The question is, what do they mean when we say one of these, and what do I mean? So if we look at number 4, to protect human rights, I know much of what I mean when I say that. And I know much of what I think they're not doing well to protect those human rights. But but I have to be very careful about not saying that they don't believe in human rights and they don't believe in extending those human rights to others. Because if I do that, I lose the conversation around that. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
And that's hard because many of my conservative friends sure feel like they are stepping constantly on the human rights of other groups, don't they? I mean, I don't know about your friends, but mine do. And so somehow I have to figure out how to challenge them in that what I see the lack there without saying you never care about. Does that make sense? These 6 things could be places that divide us, or could be places where we can enter into a conversation with each other. Okay, so if we take the first one, which is a big one for the author. How many know at least one way that you feel like your conservative friends are destroying the life support system of Earth? There's a few ways, aren't there? And they surely don't have some of my values around that, around Earth values, right? How to take care of our Earth, how to protect the environment in which we live. Does that mean, though, that they have no value around that?
Mm-mm.
Well, that's the thing. I know people who think it's a good thing to exploit the earth to the maximum. That it's here to exploit. And they have no idea that they're destroying our own future and the possibility of life on the planet.
There are some that are absolutely that way. I would venture to say, though, Ed, that even most of your conservative friends, if they are religious, don't share that as strong. Don't feel that as strongly as what you just voiced. Because they do say they will go from Genesis, for example, and say that in the Adam and Eve story, we are called to go forth and subdue the earth. But they don't think that means necessarily destroy it because we have no use for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking like Robert Redford was dealing with people who had been generations of foresters, lumbermen.
Yes.
And he said, yeah, by God, my son's going to be able to do what my grandpa did, my great grandpa did. And also, so he took them up in an airplane and they looked out and said, my God, where did it go? They had no idea the forest was so small.
Yeah.
And so once they were confronted with the information and could feel it, they realized, oh, this isn't going to work.
Yeah. And I think that's what we have to make sure we see. Where is it that they are blinded by something so that they don't see a value that they may have, but it's hidden behind something? But here's the challenge about that. They might point out some of those same things to you. Okay? And if we are in a loving relationship, we listen to that for not just for the challenge that it is, but for the love that is giving that challenge to us. And that's hard to do, isn't it? The more we are in a relationship of animosity, the harder it is to do that.
We have to find a win-win solution.
That's my perspective. I think we have to find what we can agree upon, namely the fact, okay, the Earth is warming. That's, I don't think you can debate that. All those things are happening. Now the question that becomes is, how do you discuss what is the cause of it? And then are there things we can do to ameliorate it? But we have to first read the fact that change is happening that we don't like.
That's right. That's
and
right.
I know that's not, at least from my perspective, that would be a ground to agree upon. Things are changing. Now, what do we do about it?
Yeah. And I think that maybe just as important as what you just said, Art, is not that we have a ground to agree on, but that we have an agreement to be on ground together. Not agreement ground, but that we are in conversation, that we are in relationship, that we choose that even though we're not quite in agreement yet. If that makes sense.
We acknowledge that something's going on that's different and not helpful, and then the question becomes, okay, what is, or are there things we can do to ameliorate it?
That's right. Yeah, and it's really tough because if I have a singular right answer, it's easy for me to use that right answer as a club on that other person, isn't it?
That's what right answers are.
Yeah. Yeah. And what that does is, even if our answer is the best right answer, if I'm just using it in a way that it becomes a weapon, I don't hear where that other person has something that might connect up with me.
I don't know how many of you watch 60 Minutes, but on last Sunday night, they interviewed Senator Angus King, who I never heard of before, who was the junior senator from Maine, and he is a registered independent. But the comments he made were so true, namely the fact that what's happened in rural Maine is the fact that the forest industry was their big thing, and all of a sudden they ran out of trees. Yet those people are still there. The fact that agriculture was big, but then again, people realized that the soil in Maine is kind of lousy, and they picked up and moved to other parts of the country, leaving again that industry there. So people who love the area want to stay, but all of a sudden the dynamics have changed, and they feel angry about it, upset. No one's understanding their need, their issue. Not that their issue is better or different from, but to say people in the urban area have problems, well, the people in the rural areas have their own set of problems. And the issue is, how do we collectively agree we have problems and work collectively together to solve them?
And part of what I heard in that, Art, is how do we find solutions that are more sustainable than some of those things that have devastated our country? It's happened in all different ways. In some of the traditionally liberal spaces, we have now what's called the Rust Belt. Why? Because all those things that were built around metals, suddenly we didn't have a sustainable metal industry, and so all of those fell apart all across the Midwest.
Sure, same thing, exactly.
Yeah. And we have to figure out how, if that's something we're going to base ourselves on, how do we do it in a way that in 10 years our children won't pay the price, or in 20 years, or in 50 years, right?
And these people are angry, and it's understandable they're angry. The question is, how do we help them deal with their anger?
Yeah. I lived up in Phoenix area, as you know, for quite a while, and a lot of my good friends were in the city of Buckeye. Okay, many of them were in the agriculture industry. In fact, one of them sold his farm, got a good offer on his farm, big enough that he was able to essentially build this big church that's over there, right? Which is where a lot of my friends go. But here's the thing, it meant he no longer had a farm. And someone who is a farmer, it was okay for him because he retired and sold that farm. His name is John. And that was good for John, but it meant that his children didn't have a farm to be a part of. Now, maybe they didn't want it, but those who are tied to the land suddenly were pushed out by the growing city, that's happening up that direction.
What happened to his children? What happened to his employees? And obviously, as a farmer, he employed people, and they are no longer have
That's
a
right.
job.
And how do we hear that very real, I lost this because of? There's a good reason why rural sometimes should be mad at urban. And do we hear that? Do we understand why that goal doesn't go those two different areas of our society don't necessarily go in the same direction? And how do we honor both sides of that fight? Right? So all of this is what we're going to try to talk about, how we're going to try to see it. The difficulty is
Yeah.
trying to love in the midst of that. So tell me some of your feelings as we move towards what one of my friends called the month of insurrection, impeachment, and inauguration. All three of which are pretty inflammatory words in somebody's head, right? In this place where we have so many reasons that we are feeling good about being divisive and against each other. How are you feeling? Tell me how's your heart in the midst of it all?
Well, my blood pressure has gone up about 20 points about every 3 days. I normally have like 120 over 70 or something.
Yeah.
And of late, it's been 145 over 90. And I don't know whether it's because of the outside political or the inside in the house. I'm not sure. I've taken on quite a bit of responsibility writing a book that I'm doing, and I have to turn in 3 chapters in about 3 or 4 days. And right in the middle of that came all this stuff, capital STUFF.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I wasn't able to focus as well as I could.
Yeah.
Just walk away from it and say, I don't want to do this. I'm just going to do my own thing. I don't feel good about that. I want to do something. But it's like I want to do something after I finish this. And then I have to, because I've got another 3 chapters to go into. I don't know.
Well, and Sam, I think your phrase "walk away from it" is an important one. Where oftentimes we're able to say, "I won't worry about that."
Yeah, but the problem is I do worry about it.
Yeah, this month it definitely said we have to deal with. We have to be in the middle of this stuff. It's not, you can't just hide away. And no matter how much we have important stuff to do. What else? Go ahead, Diane.
Well, I think I'm feeling mostly sad about what is happening. But I also take issue with the statement, this is not us in America behaving this way. This is us. This is deeply in our history. And I think one of the things we have to acknowledge is that this is embedded in our history, and look at ourselves truthfully.
Yeah.
We have the opportunity to do some things better. But we can't live the lie that this is something that just suddenly happened. It's been there, potential. Trump lit the fire that ignited it, but nonetheless, it's something that we need to face up to as part of our history.
And part of what you're talking about, Diane, is that healing, which is part of the title, a political manifesto to heal and transform the world. Healing is not a passive event. It's not a non-painful event, right? We'd love to have magic wand that just solves it all, but it sometimes takes going through the tunnel of pain to get to the other side.
Just like birth.
Just like birth is right. It's a hard business. And that often makes it so that we run away from. We all have a tendency, if we're not careful, to say, this isn't important enough for me to deal with, but it might be for your neighbor. Right?
Is important.
Yeah. And if we're going to
Jim, I have a question.
go ahead.
I appreciated downloading the introduction and the chapter from the email. So I was able to read the whole introduction, but I don't know when the book was published. I assume in 2020.
2019.
It was 2019 even.
2019.
Okay, because I just assumed it was
Let me,
even
let-
more.
let me just make sure I'm right on that, but I believe that's what I believe I'm thinking right.
Because he sounded like the election was, right down the road. And so I was assuming it might have even been 2020.
Yeah, 2019.
It was, okay.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting that he wrote this before all of this last year, but it sure has echoes of all this last year, doesn't it?
Oh,
If
yeah.
you didn't get a chance to read the introduction, what I'm going to do is I will send out a copy. If you don't have a book yet, I will send you out a copy of the introduction in chapter 1 after this, after the session, and then we'll do basically a chapter each week. This is going to deal with the introduction, and we'll do chapter 1 next week. And there's 7 chapters, I think, in all.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll do one of those each week, and if you never get a book, I will just keep sending you out chapters. Okay.
Please
I've
do.
got mine.
Okay, good.
But I'm appreciating getting the chapters this way.
Yeah.
So we can it however I can.
Now,
Flips it, doesn't it? Yeah,
if you read, how many got to read some of the introduction?
I did.
Okay, so Kate, tell me.
I read the whole thing.
Good. Is he trying to be gentle with us, or is he trying to challenge us to move and become something
I
more?
think, yes, I think he was trying to be challenging to us to start looking at how we can maybe do some changes in our world to achieve loving all people.
Yeah.
And rather than just the economics, and he's clearly a Democrat, but he keeps saying that the Democrats have a long ways to go to achieve loving our neighbors.
That's right. He is going to critique us a lot because he feels like we are his tribe, and he wants to tell his tribe what is not working. Okay, because how many know how you would fix some of the people who did something wrong last Wednesday? Right.
And some are from Arizona.
That's right.
Yeah.
Here's what's okay. So here's my thing about last Wednesday. I don't think in any 24-hour period I have used the word asshole so many times as last week. Just over and over and over and over again. So I have lots of ways that I want to change them. The problem is that guess who I get to work on?
Me.
Yeah,
You,
we can only change
ourselves.
ourselves.
That's right. And so what he's trying to do is help us to work on ourselves and say, what do we do? And he's not dismissing that they need to change too, but he's saying, as we work on this, as we become better at loving, then maybe we can be more effective in all of this. Okay.
I think that, yeah.
We do have to, and he's very clear about this, we have to stand our ground on what is important to us. Because love is not being wishy-washy about the important things. But it is trying
Just
to...
like in marriage, that you
That's
can't be
right.
wishy. Well, if you could be wishy-washy, but it goes down down the drain.
Okay.
Down.
So how do we be the fullness of who we are? Let them be the fullness of who they are, but be in conversation somehow.
My
think
challenge
what-
is that they don't, I mean, I will relate, my sister is part of them. And there's no way she's going to listen to me. I mean, even be open to finding commonality and finding what we can agree on because, she's right. Far right.
Yeah. She's probably right in more ways than one in her mind. Not just far right, but far righter than you. Right? And somehow we have to figure out how to be in conversation with those people.
I think that the passage that you shared at the bottom of page 1, to me, really is the key, what we should be focusing on, because it points us to, instead of kind of the symptoms of the problem, which would be lack of human rights, what happened last Wednesday. These are all symptoms. Instead, it gets us to focus on the causes and really the cure. So if we focus on what motivates us, love, kindness, generosity, compassion, if that's what we're focusing on, then that shows us what to do. And I think so often, at least in my own life, I miss the mark because I'm focused on the issue.
Yeah.
And if I'm not thinking about compassion, then I might be talking about the issue or kind of preaching the issue in a way that isn't actually going to accomplish what I'm hoping, because I'm not focused on the motivation in the first place.
At one point in all of this, he says, this manifesto is a call for all people to come back to their highest and most love-oriented hopes and instincts. Isn't that a good line? That we
Yes.
want to come back to our most love-oriented hopes and instincts. And okay, I'm not saying that I don't try to do things out of love on Facebook, but there's times when that's not my highest instinct.
I know. I'm really coming around to the only thing I can really do is to ask. I really want to know what is animating you, what are you afraid of, what bothers you, not talk about your solutions and debate it on the level of that, but what do you really care about? What worries you? What bothers you? And so and listen. So ask and listen, and if I'm giving that kind of courtesy to them, that doesn't mean they're going to change their beliefs, but at least they know that somebody cares enough about them to pay attention and listen.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything more valuable.
Yeah.
That people feel respected when they feel listened to. And
I could think of some things though that are easier, Ed.
Alcohol comes to mind.
Yeah, that's the problem with this is it will take some effort. It will take some adjustment in how I choose to view different people. So a friend of mine wrote to me today. I think because I don't remember having done this, but I must have by mistake clicked and asked her to be my friend on Facebook. I don't know why I did that. Nancy has been a friend. We went down to Ecuador together, had a great time down there, helping a church down there. I like Nancy a lot, but the last couple months I have not liked her because of her responses on Facebook, right? But somehow I must have mistakenly asked her to be my Facebook friend. So she wrote to me. She kind of essentially said, it was a full page worth of words, but it was, are you sure? Because here's who I am. And so what I said to her in return, instead of apologizing to say, no, I didn't really mean that, I
You
went
can't
to
say that.
what really is my higher ideal. I said, you know what? I think conversation and being in conversation is what we need the most right now. Even though you will be and I will be, I think being in conversation is important.
That's a nice way to say it. Yeah.
And
Being in conversation.
most of us are going to have a difficulty with that. Go ahead, Art.
I'm an anti-Facebook person. I'm intentionally not on it. I would just disclaim from it often, but again, therefore I really haven't got any basis to critique. But the little bit I've said, I just don't find that the kind of exchange back and forth, just doesn't feed me. But had it, or else it's just a lot of small. Not trivia, but small things as opposed to substantial things. Now, maybe I'm just avoiding something, but again, my sense is a lot of people go into a group, whatever it is, and that just keeps reinforcing their biases or reinforcing their way of thinking and aren't willing to think beyond. And I don't know how you, I mean, that's one of the phenomena they're saying about what our culture is going through right now is this whole issue of the impact of social media. And it's upsetting and changing a lot of relationships as a result.
Yeah, and much of that, Art, is because it's much easier in any relationship always to talk to people that are more of the same mind. And on Facebook, it becomes really simple to do that, and it becomes really simple to just be against and to treat superficially those conversations. You can be a sniper very easily on Facebook, right? Shooting from a distance at people that you don't even know, and be very outside of any real relationship. That's why something like what happened with Nancy is important, because Nancy is a person that I know. Nancy is a person that I've been in relationship with. And so it's good for me to say, let's choose each other in the midst of this, not choose you're this politic and I'm that politic. And it's not just politics. I want us to make sure that we don't just get caught up in that, because there's a lot of different reasons why we don't connect with each other, right? And we have to figure out how do we do that. One of his critiques of the Democratic Party, progressives, it have to do with things like education and economics, and how we sit on a higher educational and economic level than many of our Republican friends. And are we willing to hear it from a different perspective than that? Are we willing to hear that what's important to us isn't viewed the same way from a different perspective? Go ahead, Diane.
Yeah, as we're talking here, I'm thinking about my granddaughter who is very committed to civil discourse in the workplace. And she talks about asking questions rather than giving answers right away. For finding out how somebody is thinking about something to get more development of what that person is thinking and why that person is thinking what he or she is. And then from that, establishing where they have common ground. And I think it's a lot of hard work, but if we really care about expanding our dialogue, which is what Jenna's hoping will happen, we can't go in to begin with what we are saying we believe without finding out, first of all, what other people are thinking. And I'm going to put a caveat here, because there are times when something is said when we need to stand up and say, I don't agree on that. When somebody is called a nigger, I'm going to have to say that is a word that is offensive to me, and I really am not comfortable hearing that word. So there are times when we have to make very clear what our boundaries are. But I don't think we ask enough questions.
The problem is, Diane, I think we ask questions, but they're more along the lines of, what the hell were you thinking?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and those aren't helpful questions.
Those are statements.
Yeah.
That's more of a statement.
Yeah.
The problem is that we have to truly be vulnerable and be willing to hear a different answer, don't we? We have to truly open ourselves up to that other person.
Yeah, I talk a good game, but I get triggered.
Oh my God.
I lose it when I start out on this other objective of really asking and all. And my brother-in-law, who's a very intelligent guy, his tactics in a conversation are constantly debate me and demand proof at every step of the way. Well, he never offers proof. He's always on the offensive.
Yeah.
I really would like to learn to set my agendas aside and my positions aside, but I really can be just present, just listen, just ask, learn more, and try to see how things look through his eyes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it is going to be hard for a lot of different reasons to truly have those conversations. But we've got to do it.
Part of that brings you, I believe I'm correct, the Socratic form of instruction where you're constantly asking questions of a person, never, never lecturing, and very difficult for me to do. I mean, something like I wish I could have practiced more when I was in education, but when I've experienced it, people just keep asking you questions, drawing you out, asking, and leading you to do better thinking. I mean, that person is fantastic in terms of helping me think and helping the whole process. So I really admire people who can do that effectively.
Who is he, Art? Do you have a person in mind?
Person among those of you who are ever involved with Pima County Interfaith Council and their organizers, particularly Frank Pearson, he was one that really practiced that whole process very effectively.
I think what will help with that is for us to remember right now, one of the reasons why we are so divided is because we're looking at one particular strand, left-right strand, right? And we can argue about what's right or wrong about that and where they're at or where we're at. But that's not the only way to define this, right? There's a lot of other ways, a back and forth strand, an up and down strand. And we have to try to see, is there one of those other axes that can be the place where we can talk? Because maybe I won't be able to be where they're at on these left-right issues. But maybe we have some other spaces that are not part of that conversation that are just as important. And that's what we've got to start finding that's a wholeness type of thing. This, if we're only looking at this, that's a pretty one-dimensional thing, isn't it?
Mhm.
And all of us are much larger than just that. And if that's the only way we measure each other, we're going to have a hard time being in a good relationship.
I was just thinking how different things might be right now if instead of all the time asking, what can I prove right now, we asked, what can I learn right now? It's like, what can I learn in this conversation? But I think so often for me, I'm looking for what I can prove, what I can demonstrate, what I can argue.
So I want to give you a different way to be able to frame the world. And this is part of what he does in here. He works for a magazine called Tikkun magazine. That's an important term. For about 2,000 years, there's been a phrase that's been around religious circles called Tikkun Olam. Okay? Has anybody heard that term? It essentially means the healing of the world, the repair of the world. And how do we enter into that repair of the world? How do we enter into that repair of the world for each other? Revolutionary love, he says, seeks to unite all different populations in that pursuit. How many know that your conservative friend, as much as you disagree with him or her, how many know that they are looking at trying to repair something? Now, you may not agree with what they're trying to repair or how they're trying to repair it, but do you see how they see some sense of brokenness and they're trying to fix that? How can we start taking their desire to heal stuff and our desire to heal stuff and somehow come into a joint space together? Not because we're healing the same thing, but because there is something where we can talk around healing.
I think one way we can do that is by pointing out that, you know, although we do have different, you know, approaches to this, we have something in common here.
Uh-huh.
We do both see that, you know, something needs to really be fixed here.
Yeah. And that's at least part of what's going to have to happen. He's going to give us different strategies as we go along, different ways of helping to have this happen. But for us, it will take a lot of openness. It is much simpler to run away from some of the challenges that he's going to present to us.
I look forward to next week.
Yeah. All right. So if I don't have your email address, will you please put it into the chat box so that I can send you I'll send you the next 2 chapters, the introduction and chapter 1. And I will send you I'll send you chapters every week so that we can do that. And we will basically go 1 chapter a week. They're fairly long chapters, somewhere around 30 pages each. And so if you'll read the introduction and then chapter 1, we'll have a great time fixing the world, healing the world. And by that, I mean, I'm going to try to fix you guys.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
There will be some Thursdays I won't be able to.
Next week.
All right. And just know that every single week, if you can't come, there's the Tuesday night, Tuesday afternoon one, if that's an easier one for you. And if you if you can't come to Tuesday or to Thursday, watch the recordings.
Yeah, I'm also going to do Great Decisions, and eventually it starts on Thursday night, so I'll have to switch to Tuesday afternoon, but for now, Thursday night is fine.
Okay. So just know that however we can help each other, let's help each other do as much as we can to try to take some steps down this road, because God knows today we
Love it.
we need it more than ever, don't we?
We do.
All right. Thank you, my friends, for your time. Thank you for being willing to go down this road with us.
Thank you, Jim.
Appreciate it.
Night, everybody.
Take care.
Night.
Good night.